guys, I want to talk to you about making butternut squash into frozen cubes. Why butternut squash into ice cube squares? Well, then that way you can freeze them and add butternut into different recipes. So if you want them in cookies, pancakes, smoothies, I hide it in spaghetti. So a lot of different places, and because they're little squares, you can just pull out a couple squares for whatever you need and have it frozen for when you're needing it. Okay, so butternut squash is the one we're going to be talking about today. One of my favorite winter squashes. And I will show you in this video how we're going to do that. But first, why butternut squash and why did I choose this vegetable? It's because it's high in nutrients. According to the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, winter squash is rich in vitamin A and carotenoids, which have been shown to benefit heart health and immunity while promoting skin health. They're also a good source of fiber, which helps to keep blood sugar levels stable. So those are some of the important reasons why I choose butternut squash. Other than they taste good, it has a little bit of a sweet flavor to it. One of the things I find very interesting is if you look at when winter squash comes out, it's right before winter. So we harvest it. Is that not amazing? So it's almost like God knew we need some type of winter squash in order to get through the winter or to boost our immune systems. Because it's high in vitamin A and carotenoids, we're getting that those vitamins to help boost up our immune system. So I typically will use whatever is in season because that's why they're there. Anyway, so let's get started on how I make butternut squash into ice cube squares so that you could freeze them and use them later. The entire recipe is in the description box below if you're wanting to copy and paste it. I also have it right here if you just want to take a quick picture of it or pause it. Be sure to look for the other videos on how I utilize the butternut squash cubes in recipes. I started by cutting my butternut squash in half, and be prepared, it's going to take some strength to get through that. So once you cut it, then you want to go ahead and scoop out the seeds. I hang on to those seeds, and you can actually put olive oil on them with a little salt and bake them in the oven, and voila, you've got roasted seeds that are delish. I placed the 2 halves of butternut squash on a baking pan, put it in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for approximately 1 to 1.5 hours, or until tender when pierced with a fork. Now this may vary depending on the size of the squash, so just be aware of that. Once that's done, then I scoop out the squash with a spoon, take out the scooped portion of the squash and place it into a food processor. And as you can see, I use a Ninja. I do add 1/4 cup of water to that Ninja and the squash. Puree the squash until it's smooth. However, you may need to add additional water depending, again, on the size of squash that you used. Add the puree to an ice cube tray and freeze. Once it's frozen, you pop those butternut squash cubes out, place them into a freezer bag, and voila! You have now got butternut squash cubes. Thank you so much for joining me on our journey to health and wellness. I wanted to remind everybody that it's the small changes that we make that eventually lead up to huge results. So these itty-bitty steps that you're doing will bring great results later. Don't ever get discouraged. Know that every single little thing that you do will make an impact. So thank you for joining me.